In the golden light of early morning, the rooftops of Saframbaloo glistened like warm copper. Narrow cobbled streets echoed with distant footsteps and the low hum of shopkeepers preparing their stalls. A sleepy charm hung in the air, wrapping the town like a shawl. But beneath the surface, something unspoken lingered. Elvin Demir, a school teacher in her early 30s, walked with purpose through the town square. Her short brown hair was tied neatly, and she wore a long gray coat that swept the dust from the ancient stone paths. Her expression was thoughtful, almost troubled, as she approached the old primary school near the mosque. Inside the school, everything was in order. Desks were lined perfectly. The chalkboard had a quote from Ataturk still visible from the day before. Yet Elvin paused by the window, her eyes drawn to the distant hills beyond the old Ottoman houses. Something about this morning felt different. Later that day, during lunch, she met with her childhood friend, Murat Kaya, a local historian who had just returned from Ankara. They sat at a small tea house under a vine-covered terrace. Murat's eyes lit up as he handed her an old letter. "I found this tucked inside a copy of a 19th century travel journal," he said. "It mentions a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of the old caravansary." Elvin frowned. "That place has been sealed for decades. It's unsafe." Murat leaned closer. "But listen to this. What was taken in fire shall return in silence. It's a riddle. I think someone hid something important there." Elvin stared at the letter. The ink was faded, but the handwriting was deliberate. She felt a shiver, though the air was warm. That night, back in her modest stone house on the hillside, Elvin couldn't sleep. The wind rustled the fig trees outside her window. She sat with the letter under a dim reading lamp, tracing the words again and again. What was taken in fire? Return in silence. Downstairs, a creak. Then another. She froze. The room was still. Her eyes darted to the stairs. And then silence again. Elvin paced across the living room, the letter still in her hand. The creaking she had heard earlier no longer echoed, but her mind replayed it like a whisper in her ear. With cautious steps, she descended the narrow staircase. Her house, old but sturdy, stood silently. The only sound now was the ticking of the wall clock. She checked every room. Nothing was out of place. Yet the air felt denser, heavier. The next morning, she met Murat again by the fountain in the old bazaar. The smell of simit and fresh herbs filled the streets, but Elvin barely noticed. She showed him the letter again. "Murat, you said this came from a travel journal. Who was the writer?" Murat nodded. "An English traveler, Charles Eastmore. He visited the area in the 1860s. But his journal ends abruptly. No one knows what happened to him." "And this chamber?" Elvin asked. "Do you think it's real?" "I do," he replied. "And if Eastmore hid something, it must have been important enough to keep secret for over a century." Together, they made their way to the old caravansary. The building stood at the edge of town, overgrown with ivy and forgotten by most. Its arches were crumbling, and wildflowers had taken root between the stones. Elvin touched the cool surface of the wall. It pulsed with silence. Murat led her to a sealed entrance. Stones had collapsed, blocking the way. But he showed her a narrow gap on the eastern wall. "Look here," he whispered. "This wasn't here last spring." Elvin crouched and peered into the darkness beyond the stones. The air smelled of damp earth and old secrets. She took a breath. "Let's come back tonight. I don't want anyone asking questions." Murat agreed. That evening, under a moon hidden by clouds, they returned with torches and gloves. The town slept. Even the call to prayer had long faded. They pushed aside the loose stones and crawled through the narrow opening. The passage descended sharply, carved roughly from rock. After a few minutes, they reached a wider chamber. The torchlight flickered against the walls, revealing faded markings. Symbols. Names. And at the far end, a stone door, carved with what looked like a sun surrounded by water. Elvin reached out to touch it. The stone was cold. Just as her fingers brushed the surface, a deep rumble echoed from somewhere beyond. Something had awakened. They stepped back instinctively, eyes wide. Dust fell from the ceiling in soft cascades. Murat held up his torch, the flame trembling. "Did you feel that?" Elvin whispered. He nodded. "The chamber isn't just a room. It's part of something bigger." Using a metal rod from Murat's pack, they pressed against the door. Slowly, it shifted, revealing a narrow corridor beyond. Elvin's breath caught in her throat. The air inside was colder, ancient. They walked carefully, each step echoing like footsteps through time. The corridor opened into a vaulted hall, filled with statues carved directly into the stone. Warriors, scholars, a woman in robes holding a sealed book. "This is an Ottoman," Murat murmured. "This predates it by centuries." At the center of the hall stood a pedestal. Upon it a small wooden box. No lock. No markings. Murat moved forward. "Wait," Elvin said. "What if it's a trap?" But he had already reached for the lid. As he opened the box, both of them gasped. Inside lay a delicate pendant, shaped like a crescent moon cradling a single sapphire. It glowed faintly, though no light touched it. Suddenly, a wind rushed through the chamber, howling from the corridor behind them. The torch blew out. Darkness. Then a whisper. "Elvin." She froze. That voice was not Murat's. Elvin. The name echoed again, not shouted but spoken, soft as breath. She reached out, grasping Murat's arm. "You heard that?" she asked. "Yes," he replied, voice tight. "But it wasn't mine." He fumbled for matches and relit the torch. The flame flickered back to life, revealing that the hall was unchanged. Statues. Stone. Stillness. But something unseen had shifted. Elvin took the pendant and slipped it into her coat. It was warm against her chest. "We need to leave," she whispered. They retraced their steps, but the corridor felt longer than before. As they moved, strange sounds followed them. A scrape. A breath. The faint tolling of a bell. Back outside, they collapsed onto the grass, breathing hard. The night air felt foreign now, as though they had returned to a different world. Back at her house, Elvin placed the pendant on the table. As she watched it, it pulsed with a dim blue light. Later that night, she dreamed of fire. A library burning. Scrolls disintegrating in flame. And at the center, a man with pale eyes holding the pendant. He looked at her and whispered, "You must remember." The next day, Murat arrived with an old map. His face was pale. This was tucked into the back of Eastmore's journal. "I didn't see it before. But now." He unfolded the parchment. It showed Safranbolu and the surrounding hills, but there were marks not found on any modern chart. One circle stood out. "The Valley of Silence," Murat said. Elvin traced it with her finger. "No one goes there. Even shepherds avoid it." "That's where the pendant leads next." "I know it." They packed supplies and headed out before sunset. The path was steep, winding through olive trees and dry grass. As they approached the valley, a mist gathered, unnatural for summer. A single tree stood at the center. Beneath it, stone steps led downward. They hesitated, then descended. Inside was a crypt, far older than anything above. Carvings lined the walls, all showing the same image, the pendant, held by different hands through the ages. A guardian passed from one to another. On the final wall, they saw an image that stopped their hearts. It was Elvin. The face, the hair, the eyes, and beneath it an inscription. "The one who carries memory shall awaken the forgotten." The next day, Murat arrived with an old map. His face was pale. This was tucked into the back of Eastmore's journal. "I didn't see it before. But now." He unfolded the parchment. It showed Safranbolu and the surrounding hills, but there were marks not found on any modern chart. One circle stood out. "The Valley of Silence," Murat said. Elvin traced it with her finger. "No one goes there. Even shepherds avoid it." "That's where the pendant leads next." "I know it." They packed supplies and headed out before sunset. The path was steep, winding through olive trees and dry grass. As they approached the valley, a mist gathered, unnatural for summer. A single tree stood at the center. Beneath it, Stone steps led downward. They hesitated, then descended. Inside was a crypt, far older than anything above. Carvings lined the walls, all showing the same image, the pendant, held by different hands through the ages. A guardian passed from one to another. On the final wall, they saw an image that stopped their hearts. It was Elvin. The face, the hair, the eyes, and beneath it an inscription. The one who carries memory shall awaken the forgotten. They stood in silence, the torch casting uneasy shadows. Elvin's gaze was locked on the wall. Her own likeness, carved centuries ago. How could this be? I don't understand, she said quietly. Marat stepped forward. This goes beyond history. It's prophecy. As they explored deeper, the pendant began to glow brighter. The crypt narrowed into another corridor, sloping downwards. At the end was a sealed iron gate. Symbols around it matched those in the letter. Elvin reached out. The gate shuddered, then slowly opened, revealing a chamber lined with stone shelves. Scrolls. Books. Forgotten knowledge. A library. In the center stood a figure. Not quite human. Pale skin. Eyes like sapphire. It held no weapon, only a staff marked with the same crescent moon as the pendant. I have waited, it said. You are the last of the line. Elvin stepped forward. What do you mean? You are the memory keeper. And the seal is breaking. The air grew thick, heavy with the weight of ancient silence. Marat's hand trembled as he gripped Elvin's shoulder. What seal? She asked. The one that holds the fire beneath, the figure replied. If it breaks, this land will forget itself and fall to ash. It explained how the pendant was once used to protect sacred knowledge, a key to memory, guarded by a lineage of keepers. When the fires of conquest swept through centuries ago, the final guardian sealed the knowledge deep below. You are her echo, the figure said. You were chosen long before birth. Marat looked at Elvin. That dream. The fire. It was real, wasn't it? She nodded. I think it was a memory. Not mine, but hers. They were shown a stone basin filled with silver liquid. Elvin touched it, and visions flashed before her eyes. A city burning. A child hidden. A pendant buried in ash. Then a voice. It is not yet time. She pulled back, breathless. Earth trembled. From above, dust fell through the cracks of the ceiling. The figure raised its staff. The seal weakens. You must choose. Preserve the memory or release it. What happens if I release it? Elvin asked. All will know the truth. But all must carry the burden. Elvin looked at Marat. We can't decide this alone. The figure stepped aside, revealing a second chamber. Inside stood 7 pedestals, each with a piece of a larger symbol. One was missing. The pendant glowed and floated toward the empty space. As it clicked into place, fire erupted along the floor, tracing patterns into the stone. The past surged forward like a wave. Names, faces, secrets long hidden, and then silence. Elvin stood in the heart of the chamber, light swirling around her. Visions returned. Eastmore, the ancient guardians, the knowledge of ages. The chamber pulsed. Then she spoke. I remember. The pendant flared, and the seal closed, not with destruction, but renewal. Above, the valley changed. The mist lifted. The tree bloomed. Saframbula stirred. Dreams returned. And with them, memory. Elvin emerged from the valley, changed. The guardian reborn. But deep below, in the library of stone, the staff still stood, waiting. For the next whisper. For the next name. For the next chapter.